Hello, once again, and welcome to White Lotus of Light conversational series. This is part 2 with my guest, Paul Tisdell, a true Renaissance man, knows all manner of sacred knowledge, and has also had quite a bit of just gnosis, just direct downloads and knowing that he's gained from his incredible life experience and so forth. I highly recommend that everybody go back and listen to part 1, because especially what we're going to be going into here, some of it kind of requires the context of part 1. That said, probably a lot of this video will stand on itself. And so if you're new to the channel and you find this content to be fulfilling or helpful or interesting, go ahead and, if you would, just hit that like and subscribe button. Actually, I guess it's down on that side. It just helps the algorithm. It helps me to be able to provide a platform for Paul and the other great people we have on the show, like Templar Grandmaster Timothy Hogan, Laura Eisenhower, Sammy Richard, Grant Eagles, and many more guests to come in the future. But if you enjoyed the content, if you can hit that like and subscribe, it just really helps the channel and helps things grow. So thank you so much. And so, Paul, we ended part 1 with, you were talking about the lightning strike of the way that the Lord's Prayer lines up with the Qabbalah here. And you were talking about how, as you go through each part of the Lord's Prayer, that it has a corollary with the Qabbalah and the Tree of Life, starting at Kether and moving down. And so, did you want to continue with your thoughts there from part 1?
That creates the lightning flash, and the lightning flash was there to protect or guard the way to the Tree of Life with the cherubim or the tetragrammic key.
Yes.
In the Lord's Prayer, in the third sphere of Binah, it's the hallowed name. And the hallowed name is tetragrammaton, the 4-lettered name, which also corresponds to the cherubim.
Mm-hmm.
So in the process of doing the Lord's Prayer, you create this lightning flash and you sanctify the space by the nature of the sacred or the sanctified name, whatever it goes in the Lord's Prayer. And if I recall, most Western magical practices, Malkuth is created by the banishing of the elements, creating a sanctified space, which is also the cherubim. So the tetragrammic key creates the space in north, south, east, and west, or Yod, He, Vor, He, or however you wish to approach those 4 principles. The cross.
Mm-hmm.
A compass has a cross. And that does bugger all. But what happens and makes it relevant is the needle. The needle sits on a pin, and it's the magnetic flux of the earth that makes the needle move. It's a subtle energy that makes the needle move. In us, there is a subtlety. And if we create a compass, or set the compass so we know we're north, south, east, and west, the potentiality for that subtle guidance is a reality. We create the space. Simple dynamic child's play. Again, it's the language. The flame, as I said before, is life. It's the key to life. And it has 4 divisions which correspond to the tetragrammic key. And basically the basis of my work is off this flame. It just works so bloody good. And if you look at the flame, if you light a candle yourself, you'll see that there's the burning wick. And above the burning wick, and just kind of round it a little, is this blue-black flame. It's almost transparent. Then there's a white light that sits on top of it. And then there's that all-encompassing flame, the yod, where the synchronicity goes through all the worlds of existence. When we die, the burning wick, the life force within the body, goes out. It's extinguished. And then many people that have had death experience, myself included, travel through some kind of a tunnel, a dark tunnel. And in that tunnel, in my case, there was aspects of life, attachments, etc., that would appear on the walls of the tunnel. And I had to confront those things. The sage goes into the cave until the sage finds enlightenment. Jesus was buried in a cave and he transcended. This is the cave, the blue-black flame. It is the letter Vor of Tetragrammaton, which is 6, which is a hexagram showing above and below. This is mind, or what we understand as mind. This is the tunnel we travel through. And if you just visualize the idea of the flame and this blue-black flame, below is the burning wick, and above that is the white light. Below is the letter Hey, and above is the letter Hey. They are 5, which means life. So we have life above and we have life below. Heaven and earth, heaven and hell. Strangely enough, heaven and hell have the letter Hey, or H, that starts them. So hell is a hot burning inferno, as the burning wick. Heaven is a palace of light, which is transcendent. There we are, up the top there, that one.
Mm-hmm.
That's basically what heaven and hell means, only it was distorted by misunderstanding. And after thousands of years of misunderstanding, it is totally lost in a sort of bullshit. One is our instinct and one is our higher consciousness, our understanding. Qabbalah shows us that Binah is the sphere of understanding, and it's the divine mother.
Mm-hmm.
Saturn, karma. So we gain understanding from karma.
Mm.
What are we going to learn from in life? Karma is the path. There's no other path than the path of karma. We have to confront our karma. It's not good or bad. It's a matter of adjustment, turning the wheel.
Mm-hmm.
The blue-black flame, the cave, is mind. In the cave are all manner of things. There's spiders that can scare you. There's spiders' web that will scare you. There's different lights that appear in the night sky. That space is the cave.
Mm-hmm.
And inside that space, like I say, there's the night sky. And outside that universal space,
mm-hmm.
the Qabbalah calls limitless light, the aim, brilliant light. And that light emanates from all of those different planets, etc. In mind. In mind, those planets represent thoughts and ideas that are related to the 7 sacred planets, be they greed or compassion, etc., depending on which part of the duality that you're in. But that is mind. The blue-black flame and the tunnel is mind. And it's the passage we go through in death. And it's also dreaming. It's also the world of dreaming. But what it does, if you watch a flame, it devours the fat of the lamb. It devours the matter that the flame rises from. Once that blue-black flame's gone, it kind of goes out, you know, it'll smolder for a little while. It's gonskis. So if we understand what this tunnel is, know it for what it is, not be afraid of it, then we start to gain some sort of direction in mind. Below our instincts and all the fears and all the rest of that stuff is the burning wick. It turns to salt. We learn from those. But it's the white light is the process of the flame. That's the process of light. It's to gain understanding.
Mm-hmm.
We're in this situation on Earth right now that is less than pleasant to the emotional body of us all. And what's giving us more grief than anything is the instincts. What's going on in I can't remember the place with Russia and all the rest of the
Ukraine,
stuff.
the Ukraine.
Yeah, I knew it, but yes, that's it. What's going on over there is extremely instinctual.
Mm-hmm.
Whether Putin's doing the right or wrong thing and whatever else is going on, the way of addressing it is instinctual. It's the instincts. It's hell. There's little light in that process. What can we learn from that? Well, one, we can learn that violence is probably not the best way to go.
Yeah.
And all our fears, etc., are in that cave, that blue-black flame. If we know how to manage that darkness, that blue-black flame, then we've got a pretty good advantage in these situations. But what is the technology to manage that cave? When you meditate, you go into the cave, you die to the world. And you confront mind. If you can't, one of the hard things about meditation is actually getting through the bullshit mind has. Oh, I've got to go and wash up. I've got to do this, or whatever program's running in the inner media. That's where media has become our mind. It is mind externalized. And in reality, the world is mind externalized.
Yes.
So if we learn how to master mind, then the potentiality of what's happening in the world must in some way be affected. Now, when you walk, your feet are on the earth, they're in the burning wick, so to speak. And you don't want to walk blindly. You need to know where you're putting your feet. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't have the vision from above to know where you're going, you're going to trip over.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's really simple. Light is understanding. That's where enlightenment begins, in understanding. If you have no understanding, you have no light. You're totally in the dark. Simple language. But that is the light of understanding. That's enlightenment. The Merkaba, a tradition that has kind of got lost because most of the people died in ecstasy, is about traveling through the 7 halls and arriving at the throne of God. The throne of God is in Bina, understanding. The simplicity of the 7 is moving through the 7 levels. Let's call them the 7 deadly sins. The path of Tor, which is the central path, the burning wick that rises up from Malkuth into Yesod, the burning, is the salt. And from the 32 paths of wisdom, it is the path that controls the 7 sacred planets.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we can look at that in the chakras and become all very Eastern. Or simplistically, we look at the 7 deadly sins, where they're running us.
Mm-hmm.
When we overcome them, there is, when we're not run by those things, there's an incredible harmonic. And that harmonic stops burning and taking all the energy that we're expending. Does that make sense?
Yes.
What happens is we move into the blue-black flame that rises from Yesod,
mm-hmm.
and starts to merge with the light at Taparath in self-awareness,
mm-hmm.
the solar principle. It starts to merge with that. There we are.
Mm-hmm.
You see, the Tor reaches up, is the wick, So it's when that harmonic of not being run by those 7 things is somewhat alleviated, then our relationship to mind changes. Now, if you look at you don't need to go to it, you look at the world card, the mandala, the wreath that she stands in, is created by 2 overlapping circles. That's just the nature of geometry. That's a passage between 2 worlds. The formula of pi is 22/7. The diameter divides the circle in 2. There she is over there. The diameter divides the circle in 2, which is the same basic idea of the 2 overlapping circles having the mandala as the central path or the portal to the inner world. On the circle, that portal is the diameter, the central path of the tree between duality. Now, if I take that circle, which would appear to be a diameter line of the diameter going vertically, I put it horizontally, I create the symbol of salt. Yeah, that's it. I create the symbol of salt, a circle divided in 2. And she is burning the deadhead, which is demonstrated by the cherubim outside, to create the salt of earth. Now, if you look at the symbol of salt, it's a flat horizon. Where are we? Pretty easy.
Here's salt right here. Is that what you were just describing?
That's matter. Salt is over on the right. There's 3 down. 3 down. There's that's him.
There it is. Yeah.
So you've got matter and you've got salt. You're quite intuitive. Right. Now, flame is horizontal, vertical rather. When the flame has nothing left to burn, you're left with the horizontal. Right? Because the flame goes out, there's nothing left to burn.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. Wow.
Got that?
Yeah. So sorry, that's a boom for me, but go ahead, continue.
So when the horizontal is gone, the horizon. And look, there's nothing on the horizon. It's clear. Yeah? It's a clear horizon. There's nothing there. It's flat, equilibrium. We have equilibrium. Then from that equilibrium, do we ascend into the tree? We ascend into mind from equilibrium, the salt of the earth. Don't go into mind without equilibrium. When you have equilibrium, then you can deal with mind.
So I want to interrupt right there because you just brought up a super huge point that I think is important for people who are maybe a little bit newer to some of the subject matter. You said you have to have equilibrium first, and I want to point out that is mastery of the element of water and or your emotions is somewhat required. This is sometimes described in Buddhism of you have muddy water in a jar, and then you need to let that mud settle, and then there's the clear water and the mud's at the bottom. And that settling comes from dealing with your emotional hangups. If you have severe trauma or you have some kind of unresolved emotions in you, you have anger, rage, jealousy, whatever kind of depression, whatever kind of thing, that sort of has to be addressed as part of this process in order to have that clarity of mind and that equilibrium that Paul's talking about. And there's lots of ways to do that, changing your, getting exercise, changing your diet, going internally, working on things. There's even something I had a lot of success with was something called a neurofeedback machine, where it does sounds and then it has music that skips, and then that helps sort of reprogram your brain to move away from trauma. There's a lot of things that you can do to get that emotional mastery. But if you're not facing your shadow, as Jung would have put it, and integrating that and coming to terms with that, whether that's trauma you've suffered or mistakes that you yourself have made. As Paul said, you got to forgive yourself first. And so you need to work on that emotional material to get to the point to where you can start to do it. Otherwise, sooner or later, even if you're able to meditate early on, my experience anyway, is that I started to run into barriers due to my own unresolved trauma and unresolved shadow, which I've been working on massively, especially in the past 6 or 8 months. And so I just wanted to put that in there because Paul's talking about that equilibrium, and Paul is very far along and very developed. But for people who are at an earlier stage of development, you might be like, man, I can't meditate at all. My mind's too agitated. And the mind is agitated when the waters are stormy, when the emotions are stormy, because there's unresolved shadow within you. Well, would you agree with that, Paul? I don't want to put words in your mouth or anything like that.
Totally. Like you say, Jung, who did a mountain of work slowly, but did it.
Yeah.
Delve into taking dream interpretations. And the archetypal nature, which is the language that's been taken from us, is the language of mind. Dealing with the archetypes that the mind presents. But so too is events. They're not disconnected. You know, as you would know, and I assume many would know, that what's in our subconscious puts us in a position where the event that is related to the subconscious material appears before us. And yes, we get to believe that's true. And the key word is we believe it's true.
Yes.
You know, if you have low self-esteem, then you're constantly going to go into situations where someone's going to say you're an idiot. If you remove the low self-esteem, the person that's going to call you an idiot is still going to call you an idiot, but you're not there. You're not in that Tao. You've moved into a completely different current.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And the whole thing is the center pillar. You want to move into that current of enlightenment, of upliftment. So you've got to deal with what is. And it's that, like you say, it's equilibrium before we enter mind. And if we look at equilibrium or the horizontal line, what's on the horizon? Well, if we look at the horizon, we've got war, we've got vaccinations, we've got all sorts of bullshit. And all of those things aren't happening right here, right now. They're happening in somewhere else, but they're not happening here. Now, it's a discipline, but more than a discipline, it's a realization that the reality is, if we look in the room right here, there's no war, there's no COVID, there's just what's in the room. So if in the mind there's worry of war, where is it in the room? If it's in the room, we'll then address it. If there's a bomb going off in the house, get the buggery out of there. If it's not, then it's not. It's that simple. And it's the simplicity of what I'm saying here. It's the key. If it's not, it's not. Now that's, most people wouldn't even hear that.
Right. And I just want to add to that. We've been trained that compassion equals being concerned about all these tragedies all over the world. And there's an element of truth to that, of that we are a global society and we ought to help our fellow human beings. But if you really look at it, 90% of this caring about what's going on elsewhere on the earth is moving us away from our center. It's not causing us to move into a place of taking compassionate action. If it does, great, do that. But if it's taking to a place of fear or like, oh, those poor kids, and believe me, the children is always what gets me and makes me the most upset. That's my emotional hook I have to watch out for. But when you get caught up in the, oh, there's this horrible suffering, what it usually makes you end up feeling is powerless. And it's an illusion because it's, as Paul's saying, it's not right there in the present, in the here and now. And this isn't to say don't give a shit about other people because they're not here right in front of you, but instead be with yourself right there. And if it arises, oh, I ought to call my friend who's having a hard time, call that friend who's having a hard time. If it arises, hey, I want to give to some charity to help displaced refugees of, say, Yemen, because nobody talks about the war in Yemen, or the Ukraine, because everyone's talking about that right now. It doesn't matter. If you want to help people, let that arise from that place. I forget the Sanskrit word, but there's a Sanskrit phrase that means rooted in being, perform action. But it starts with rooted in being, which is another way of what Paul's saying, that middle path, that middle pillar, be present, be here now. And from within that present, then take the compassionate action. And the reason for that is, as Paul talked about in part 1, which you should really watch, and the vibration of homeopathy, vibration is one of the foundational principles of the universe. And if you're acting from a place of compassion, from a place of stillness, that has a purity and a power to it, that just taking that action, or worse yet, taking that action from a place of fear and upsetness, it's going to have a different quality to it. It's going to have a different impact on you and a different impact on whoever receives that energy, even if it's subtle and you don't see it right away. And this isn't to say that if you want to give to charity and you're scared, you shouldn't give to charity. But if you're able to find that place of stillness and presence and being here now and acting from that place, it's going to have a lot more power and efficacy. And I just wanted to throw that in there because that what you were saying made me think of that.
Let's consider the flame again. It's a very useful tool.
Absolutely. Let's pull it up.
Now, if there's a lot of thought, a lot of wind going around, the flame is blowing all over the shop and might even go out. But if it's still, it rises and emanates light.
Mm-hmm.
So the blue-black flame, the mind, is what devours the burning wick. And from that devouring process between the blue-black, between mind and matter, between mind and the body, emanates light. It rises, it's above it. Now, if we act from the blue-black flame and the burning, then it's rather violent. And we're caught in mind. But if you think about the flame and the light, it emanates such a long way. One flame can light a whole bedroom. One candle will put enough light in a bedroom that you can see. The burning wicks, you're lucky if you see that, but the light fills the bedroom. And if you've got 5 candles, that bedroom is well lit. What does that tell you? It's the light that comes from the stillness. It's not the activity in the burning wick, it's the light. And that, as you say, it's a subtle vibration. But people can see in that light. You can see. If you can see, then those with eyes to see will see.
Yes.
The more we're in that light, which sounds rather new agey, but who gives a fuck? The more we're in that light, the more others will see. It's not that we have to run out and save the world or do this or do that. We have to be. If we're that light emanates. If we're not, we're all in the bloody dark.
Yes.
And as hard as it is not to get involved in the horror of Ukraine, or actually remember the name thanks to you, the horror of Ukraine that way. But if we can create just enough light, enough understanding, just from that one place, like a room, it can't happen. There's a theory, well, not a theory, a thing that happened a long time ago. You might probably heard the 100 monkey syndrome or something.
Yeah, 100
one monkey learned to peel bananas or something, and they all got into mangoes after that. So the same thing here. It's the same dynamic. The more we can touch it, the more light. You can't do that process without being compassionate.
Yes.
It's impossible, because that compassion is your true nature.
Yes.
We're full of hatred and all the rest of it. We're just totally ego bound. But when we get close to our true nature, we're compassionate. The more present we are, the more loving we are. Love is being present. It's not affection. It's not attachment. When you're with your lover, you're totally present. Get the key, be present. That's love. So if we're there, all those wonderful qualities we seek, you don't have to seek them anymore. If you're in the light, you'll see them. They're there. If you're that, all of that's there. Every master that's ever walked this earth, that's ever graced us, has demonstrated the same archetype of being. They've been loving, they've been compassionate. Thank God they've been wise. They've been self-sacrificing, all that stuff. The more we're present to our true nature, that's us. They're showing us who we are, not who we're not. We believe we're all this shit. Well, belief has to be burnt by the fire. The more space you have, the more fire you have. Yeah. Now, I'm going to attempt to do something here. I'm not going to attempt it. I'm actually going to do it. I'm going to imprint a vibration into the video.
Please.
So that when people connect with it, they will connect with the fire. So what I'm asking is that people just be still and present. It doesn't matter what religion or dogma that you're attached to. Just forget it. This is just a technique. Shh. Now there's an energy. There's a space. Shh. That's better now. Shh. Now, if I want to be very occultly, so I can profoundly say, I can go shin. But it's not shin, it's shh. And there we are in peace. Now, if we can be in peace in this space by simply going shh, what of mind? Mind is still. Shh. The light emanates. When I used to do public talks, I would produce a large amount of energy, so a hall full of people would sit here. And the way I did it was just simply being here, simply being present. Create the space. Energy fills. Shh. The stiller we are, the more energy there. This is transcendent. If we're transcendent, the light emanates. How ridiculous is this? This is a flame. Scientists are looking at every little bit of matter. Here's a flame. We light a joint with a flame.
Here's the real alchemy for you. I'm just kidding.
We light a joint with a flame.
Yeah.
It's the flame. We don't see it. We see the smoke from the joint and what the mind presents, but we don't see the flame. The tetragrammic key. What a wondrous thing. Years ago, I read a chapter in the Zohar called The All-Encompassing Flame. And that bloody chapter has plagued me now for 40 or 50 years. What a wonder. It's burnt all the bullshit out of the way. And the simplicity of that defies the intellect and the ego to come around and go, oh, but it's this and it's that. Argue against it. Be in it and argue against it. You're not in it. Don't argue, just be with it. The blue-black flame is the mind. It is here where the technology that you know, magical technology, is most useful. Because there's things that come into that dark space, shadows, that feed off the vitality of the burning. It's in this space that those things can be dealt with in the blue-black. Because in the light, there's no need. If you understand what's going on, nothing's going to affect you. If you're in the light, the darkness cannot enter. It's just a dynamic. As above, so below. This is where we need to be. This is where we need the dynamics of the occult to deal with mind. Media has taken the place of mind. It's feeding us, buy this shit, buy that shit. Advertising, it's all manipulation of mind. Politics, manipulation of mind. So mastermind, that could be a new contest on television or the media. Mastermind. It's not about what bullshit you know. It's about what you don't know. Empty out. Just know that. If you know that, you know the center of your being. Anything but that is bullshit. Anything of that takes you away from that is an illusion. And we're constantly dragged from that space. Walking down the street, we're dragged from it. We tread on the dog shit, we're dragged from it. We react to the dog shit. That's karma. Come back. Come back to the space. We start doing that. That's what the Buddha and everyone else was saying. Jesus got on a bloody cross to show us that. That's a big step. There it is. That's where we got to go. This other stuff, ignore it in your mind space. Pay it no mind at all. Pay this all your mind. Then we have an answer to the problem. There's no other answer. There's no solution to stupidity other than wisdom. And wisdom is nothing. It's being here and dealing with what's right here, right now. Chokmah, wisdom is on the mountaintop. It's simplicity. I've said this before. I'll probably say it again before I'm gone. It's simplicity, because you're up there, you look down, and there's the path that's winding. It's going from there to there. Simple. When we're walking all that shit, it's not simple. But up there, it's simple. If we're in the instincts where the feet are, it's complicated. If we're up here and understand, we know where we're going, we see where we're going, and the feet will surely follow. If not, you're not watching the light, it's the joint you're watching. Up here, there's the flame. The other flame showing us again. There's the light, which is the head, and the feet, which are burning. The feet follow the head, not the head. If the head following the feet, we're walking around in circles. Our body shows us that. The way we think up here. I haven't thought in my toe ever. I've never had a thought in my toe. I've kicked it plenty of times. I thought, oh, that's hurt. But I thought here, not there. Probably if I had more awareness in my toe, I may not have kicked it. But this is where I think. Know thyself. I'm a simpleton. I'm not complicated. This moment, it's lovely, isn't it?
Simplicity itself, yeah. And it's the peace that passeth understanding, as they say in the Bible, that Jesus talks about. And to me, that's almost the key teaching of anything, is the peace that passeth understanding, because those who would try and hurt us like sheepdogs want us to be in the fear that passeth understanding, to where we're so afraid we'll give up our children, our bodies, everything. And that's what they want. And that only happens when you're locked in that fear. When you're in the present moment, you start to have that peace starts to fill you. You empty first, and then you get filled up with peace.
That's it. What can they do with that? All they can do is kill us.
Yep.
Oh, well.
Yeah.
You're dead to the world that anyway. What did Jesus say? Be in the world, but not of it. Well, you're dead to the world, basically. But you're alive to the spirit. And the spirit in which we do things is the most significant thing.
Absolutely.
And if we're possessed by the spirit of anger or fear, we do things in that spirit.
Yes.
So in that context, that's mind. So banishing pentagram of fear or something like that, some way of approaching it, probably just letting it go is the easiest way. But it gives you some sort of tool in order to actually have the courage to confront yourself.
Yeah.
And I can't see any other solution. You know, putting a chain on Putin's not going to, there'll be another Putin. And there'll also be some other bullshit running America and Australia. You should see what we've got as a prime minister.
Oh God, is it something Andrews? Is it Dan?
Oh no, what's his name? Morrison.
Oh right. I always get the guy who's like the Victoria dictator, mini dictator guy, and Dan Andrews, I think his name is. Yeah, and it's Scott Morrison. That's the name of the
Scott
PM.
Morrison, yeah. ScoMo, they call him. Yeah, he's well renowned as a liar, and he's one of those weird Christian groups that go and do all the Hail Marys or whatever they do, and they're nuts. They're just nuts.
Yeah, not Christian in any way. You can't do what not in any real sense. Yeah. Wow. What I want to say to our viewers is some people might be like, oh, if you do what Paul's saying, then the bad guys are going to win. Well, Paul's not saying be present and don't do anything, although that may be very viable and even helpful, especially to the people who are running around like a chicken with their head cut off. But what he's saying is be rooted in that being. And then from that space, do things, do whatever your calling is. Help, put a garden in, help out children in your community, whatever it is, create a school that teaches children stuff other than this, propaganda and conformist crap that they teach in the public schools. Learn herbalism, learn homeopathy, do whatever it is that you're called to do. And the funny thing is that if you do what Paul's saying and you get centered, you will very quickly discover what's actually authentic within yourself and what really resonates with your natural spiritual blueprint. And from there, you can start performing actions that are going to be way more efficacious than what you're doing when you're running around caught up in mind. And I mean, I'm just saying that this is my own personal experience. When I get centered, I make vastly better decisions. The quality of my actions is much higher. I may not get as much done, but what I do get done has a much longer reverberating effect in my life than when I'm doing it from a fear-based place or a stressed out place or whatever. And so don't hear what Paul's saying as, oh, giving up and rolling over. That's not what he's saying. He was just pointing out a worst case scenario of, oh, well, what if I was in that space and then the Gestapo or whatever came for me? Paul's saying, well, then it doesn't matter anyway. But he's not saying don't do anything. He's saying do something, get in this space, and then from there, what spontaneous action will arise? Because it's going to come from a level of intelligence that's higher than human intelligence, and it's going to be more powerful.
Think about this, that if you're in let's say you're sitting by a fire at night and a snake crawls up. Now, if you go into a fear, you're probably going to get bit or you'll jump on the fire. And it's instinctual to get fearful. Like a snake crawls up to me, I'm going to be at least aware.
Yeah, especially in Australia. Everything's poisonous down there, venomous, yeah.
If you're still, then there's less likelihood of the snake actually biting you because you're not a threat. And you can act accordingly. You can pick up a stick and move the snake away or whatever's necessary for the stick. You will respond in stillness, in the instinctual, the instincts will work without belief. Yeah, that's just the base of the flame. They will work to preserve the body without belief. If you're in fear, then it's belief. Whether it's the belief is founded or not is irrelevant. It's still belief. You believe the snake's going to bite. It hasn't actually bit yet, but you believe it is. I think I told you the story last time I was quite a few months ago, I was surfing down the road and I was paddling out. And I was a fair way out and I'm paddling and I touched the bottom. I thought, shit, it's shallow out here. And I looked down and it's a dark grey mass. I thought, oh, that must be a big stingray. And then there's this big whooshka over my back. Feel this thing go over and water splashed everywhere. And I was quite at peace. What I'd done is actually patted a great big tiger shark on top of the head.
Oh, geez.
He paddled, he swam off, and the guys around me were all freaking out and all the rest of it. So we all paddled him, but it was a spiritual experience. It was wonderful. Not something I want to do every day, but yeah, I was at peace. And I patted him on the head. His name was Michael.
Wow.
That's what he said. My name's Michael. And off he went down the beach. And so we walked down and got a few guys out the water down the beach. But if I'd have been in fear, I'd have at least attracted his attention. But I was totally oblivious. It was the bottom. And then, that looks funny. That's not a bottom. And then obviously we'd see the tiger stripes, and that's a bloody big tiger shark.
Wow. Yeah, that's going to get you in the present moment one way or the other.
Right there, right now.
Boy. Wow. Yeah. That's intense. I can't quite wrap my mind around the thought of stepping on a shark. I mean, sharks actually almost never attack humans. It's a funny thing, but boy, are they terrifying looking.
There's plenty of them down here, right?
Yeah, there's just the teeth and a method of getting those teeth to you. So yeah,
be present.
Wow. Yeah, it's and the thing is that it's so subtle that the mind is repelled by this, what Paul is talking about. The mind is repelled by it, but then the mind is that blue-black flame, and it wants to, the mind or the ego or whatever you want to call it, it's not really the enemy. It's just a naturally occurring phenomenon. But at the same time, if you let it run things, it's quite terrible. Another way of describing, and again, please correct me if I'm wrong, but another way of describing part of the process that Paul is talking about, it's moving from the head, I would say, to the heart. And that the mind is a despotic ruler, but a beautiful servant. It allows you to do all kinds of incredible things: architecture, music, painting, art, all this stuff when you have that clear mind. But when the mind is running the show, it makes terrible decisions. Whereas the heart is a wonderful, beautiful, benevolent leader and ruler, and it will take you in beautiful, wonderful directions. But it really is a terrible, terrible servant, and will drag its heels at every turn and cause all kinds of mischief when it's not leading. And so having that flip-flop of letting your heart lead and letting your mind become the servant is incredibly helpful. And the mind doesn't like that, though, of course, because the mind is used to running things. That's its comfort zone. That's its sort of, it's a false natural state of something we become accustomed to, of letting the mind make all the decisions. But the mind is going to forever act in ways that are counter to our true nature, because our true nature is to operate from this heart center and use the mind as a servant at the direction of the heart. And that's that compassion that automatically arises when the mind becomes still, like the surface of a pond or a lake right at evening. It'll often become very smooth like glass. And that's when you have the mind in that state, it becomes incredibly powerful because it has limitless potential, because it's no longer contracted down to this fearful thought or this angry thought or envious thought or whatever it is. I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth, Paul, but would you agree with that, what I just said, to some degree?
The Qabbalah says the seat of Binah, understanding, is within the heart. So we're not going to understand much without the heart. If we have an awareness of our heart and it's beating fast or regular or tense, then first thing to do is bring it to peace. Then we have the seat of understanding. We come to peace. If we're at peace, the heart is, like, if I would have freaked out when I patted Michael on the head. I'm sure my heart would have been jumping all over the shop and I wouldn't have understood what was going on at all. But I was at peace. And what was going on was he was swimming on by. He wasn't interested in me. He was just saying hello. And hello, I was at peace. And I didn't have a heart attack or any of those things. That was a good day. I didn't get many waves. I'd only just paddled out, but that's okay. There's other days. So the simple nature of how our body works shows us the way. Know thyself. If you're full of shit, your mind's running and all the rest, your bowel's full of shit, and it gets to such a point that you can't ignore it. You've got to go and have a shit. And what do you do that? You got to let it go. You got to deal with the smell and all, but you've got to let it go. Well, there's the answer. Let go. Yes, don't fight with it. Don't do anything. Acknowledge it's there and just let go. Our body shows us. It's created from the cosmos, the universe, stardust, all those things. It's in harmony. So if we understand how it works, then the processes of life must be within it. What happens when we eat food? If you're all stressed, then you're not even going to chew it. If you're in a hurry, you're not going to chew it. You're going to swallow it. You get acid and all sorts of stuff. So if you eat your food in a decent mind space, you chew it better. You chew it over, you swallow it. The rest happens without your participation. It sorts itself out. So what happens in life? Mind space, chew it over, let it go. It sorts itself out. And when we do that, we get realizations, but the idea comes of how best to do something or what we should have done or et cetera, without any effort from us. We don't have to sit there and worry over it. We've just got to chew it over. So we've really entered the whole thing and embraced it all, not hidden from it. Got it all. Okay, let it go. And it comes back. What we need comes back. We don't have to do anything. That's
wisdom.
Hard. Yeah, look, what's the Tao? The wise do much. The wise do little and achieve much. The foolish do much and achieve little. Hey, yes. That's profound. Let our body do it.
Yeah. And I want to point out that Paul draws upon all these different sources because there's wisdom and beauty in all these different mystical traditions throughout the world. And there's wonder to be found in all these things. And one of the things that makes me sad is that kind of paradigm that people bounce between is like, there is no God, or I'm skeptical about God, or this very specific, very ratcheted down religion, when in reality, there's beauty to be found in all these systems. And if you only feel comfortable within Christianity, just as an example, then delve within that. There's a lot in there. In the mystical traditions within Christianity, there's great wisdom. And if you look at what Yeshua or Jesus actually said, and I mean, a lot of that's been edited by the Council of Nicaea and what have you, there's tremendous wisdom in there if you understand the depths of what's being said. Very often it's much deeper than the surface words appear, just as Paul was pointing out how there's a depth to the Lord's Prayer that is beneath the surface of those words. And so regardless of what your paradigm is, I would recommend, if you're able to do it and feel comfortable, to do what Paul is pointing to and what I've been doing for years, which is look at these different traditions, look at these different philosophies, such as what the work of Jung and the archetypes, that's worth looking at. Look at the Qabbalah, that's worth looking at. Look at Taoism, that's worth looking at. There's beauty and wonder in Hinduism. And if you're Hindu and you've never really looked into Christianity, maybe look into that. And just look into it with an open mind without having it all the meaning that other people have tried to tell you that these things mean. And instead, find the depths of it. The majority of what Paul's been saying has been rooted in the Judeo-Christian system, Qabbalah in particular, but he often brings up, aspects of Christianity. And the reason Paul's flowing between all these things is because they're not really separate. They have the same source, and that source is what Paul pointed to a little while ago. It's that incoming wisdom that comes in when you're in a place of stillness. And whether it was Jesus or Lao Tzu or Pythagoras or the Buddha, Sierra Gautama, whatever the original messenger or conduit for that information is, the source is the same. And that source is that divine intelligence that is our true nature. It's the Godhead. It's the Atman in the Hindu tradition. It's that place within us, the kingdom of God in Christianity. That's what it's really speaking of. And from that place, universal intelligence can come through, which is so far beyond the limitations of the human mind. And I don't know if what you think about what I just said, but yeah.
Well, in our body are a lot of cells, all individual cells. There's probably billions of them. I've never counted them. There's a lot.
Trillions, I think, actually. Yeah.
A bloody lot. That's what that's called in Australia. That's a bloody lot.
Yeah.
And every one of those cells is connected to one life source. They're not independent. They're a part of one life source. One life source goes, all those cells die. One life source. Well, are we any different? We're connected to one life. Nature has one life, and through that one life, all these other lives come and go. They're all part of a Jacob's ladder, biodiversity. And that entire biodiversity supports all these different creatures, and they're all part of one life.
Yes.
So if the lions rule and they eat everything, they're gone. It's one life, and we all share it. And to assume that there's any other than one God is to cut off your arm, because those other cells aren't a part of your belief in God. It's bloody madness. Know thyself. Little fingers, they're all connected to the one source. That's just what you said. Our body chose us. It's in the image of God. So what does it have to say? Like I say, I'm a simple person. I'm simplistic. I'm not educated. I have a bit of an understanding of Qabbalah and a little bit of alchemy. But I understand myself a bit because I was dyslexic and didn't read much. I had myself to read. And then all these other things come along and go, well, look at that. It's the same as you. Division. Look, we fight one another. We hate one another. We control and manipulate. Try hating your toe. Sit there and get a pair of pliers and cut it off. You'll get over it. You'll soon drop that madness and leave your toe alone. If not, you'll walk with a limp forever. Toes are important. Leave them there. Don't chop your toes off. Love them. Love one another. Eh? That's where it's at.
And it's literally right there. Jesus was pretty explicit about that. And yet somehow people are like, except for those guys. And that's it. Were Jesus alive today, he would be saying, oh, look at my beautiful Hindu brothers and sisters, my Taoist brothers and sisters, and whatever, and all the rest. Because Jesus, Yeshua, exemplified this understanding of what Paul's pointing to. And so I bring this up because I know a lot of my viewers have come from that background. There's also a lot of my viewers who actually move in the other direction, and they're really into parts of esoteric and occult and hate Christianity and say, oh, it's the cause of all problems. And you're back to the same thing. Whether you're a Christian who's bigoted against pagans and people who do magic, or whether you're a magician who, is pagan and hates Christians, you're just mimicking each other, and you got to get free of that. You got to liberate yourself from all these kind of the other, and the other is bad because you're really, cutting your nose off to spite your face, or shooting yourself in the foot, or heaven forbid, taking pliers to your toe. Paul went with a really extreme example there. I mean, I'm glad he said pliers and not like a hedge clipper, because pliers, you probably stop yourself pretty quick into it. Hedge clipper, it might be done, and then you go, what have I done? I would hope that none of my viewers were taking Paul literally there, but yeah. And so, yeah, I mean, it really is, the solutions to so many of our problems are incredibly simple. That doesn't mean that the application of solutions or actual solutions will be not complicated, because we live in a complex world, but they're going to come from a place of simplicity if they're true solutions. You know, Einstein said you can't solve a problem at the same level of consciousness at which it was created. And I think that, you know, there's a lot of stuff that's attributed to Einstein that's, you know, of various degrees of merit, or you know, some of it's really incredible. But I tell you, that one thing is maybe the most powerful thing Einstein ever said, in my opinion anyway. And that is that you have to transcend that level of consciousness to find real solutions, not band-aids, but real solutions. And that space is this place of simplicity. You let go of things, and then the wisdom comes back in once you've created that space. And yeah, from there, like, really anything is possible. And that's where we're going to see real solutions take place in the world. I spend a lot of time in the show talking with folks who talk about, you know, I mean, I go back and forth between the mystical and the material realms quite intentionally, because I think they're both important, but our culture tends to fixate on the material side of things. And that's useful up to a point. There's a stage of awakening that not everybody, but a lot of people go through. I went through it myself. I actually had a mystical vision in early of 2001, and then kind of like went back to sleep. And I had been very materialistic prior to taking this Religions of India class back in 2000, the winter semester of 2000, crossing over to 2001. And then I had this mystical vision, which included 9/11, the 2008 crash, and then now COVID. I didn't realize it at the time because it was cloaked in symbolism, but I see it now in retrospect. And then I kind of went back to sleep, and then 9/11 happened. And my experience personally was that I had to go through a political awakening. It was around that time that I discovered that there was the nasties had their little secret societies and groups and central banks and the media and all their different mechanisms of control that they had that were rooted in black magic, really, actually. And that, you know, I had to go through, the Bush family, like they helped the Nazis during World War II. Oh my God. And just all this mind-blowing stuff of finding out how the back end of the controllers of the world work. And it was very unpleasant. And what that did is it caused me to become even more depressed than I already had been. And I was very depressed and very unhappy and very obsessive and just running around in a circle. And that pain built up until it started to crunch down on me. And then I had an ever more increasing desire and movement towards the spiritual, because I couldn't take the suffering anymore of the material world and what I was uncovering with this journey down rabbit holes of, you know, real, actual conspiracies, which now are out in the open and in your face. They're not even hidden anymore. You can't rightly call them conspiracies anymore, because they're not occulted anymore. They've come out in the open. And, you know, that was very disheartening. But the potential silver lining to that dark cloud is, if it then moves you to go, okay, I have to do something different, that's when you can move into what Paul's talking about. And that's where the real solutions arise, because that level of consciousness that created this superstructure of, you know, in the first section, we talked about geoengineering and weather control, and, you know, they're flooding people out of Northern Australia and telling them, I think it's Northern Australia, and telling them, move out of there and don't come back. And it just so happens it looks just like the UN Agenda 2021, Agenda 2030, Great Reset, WEF crap of moving people out of the rural areas and into smart cities. That's not an accident. It's very much by design. But this kind of stuff, the importance of it is to be aware of it so you can take certain basic survival things for you and your family. But the hope is that it's going to move you in the direction of a true solution. And honestly, if we try and fight these people, they would love that. There's nothing they would like better. And it's likely that there will be physical conflicts that occur around the planet. It's happening already in the Ukraine and Yemen and other places on Earth are in conflict right now, and it may very well spread. But if we're going to move into something new, a new stage in civilization, and move past that. And that's the beauty of what's happening right now, is an opening is being created. Now, these nasties want to create this opening to make an even more, somehow more hellish nightmare transhumanist prison. But that same opening that they're intentionally creating for their dark vision, we can use if we get to this space that Paul's talking about, the space of true intelligence, true creativity, true wisdom, and true compassion. And from that space we act, we can move things in a completely different direction. And that's the opportunity that's presenting itself as these old systems crumble down, is there's a vacuum being created. Again, going back to what Paul said in part 1, nature abhors a vacuum and it wants to be filled. And the question is, are we going to fill it with something new that's coming from that place of the all-encompassing flame, and even higher from that divine spark that comes down in the form of knowledge and compassion? Or are we going to give in to fear? And obviously we don't want to do that. So then this inner cultivation, it's the key. It really is the key. And from that place, you'll be able to do wondrous things you never even imagined. You'll be able to find your true calling. You'll be able to find things that give your life real meaning, instead of the false meaning that's been given to us by these controller types. And so I really encourage people to really listen to what Paul's saying, go back and listen to it again and really implement it. Just even if you spend 15 or 20 minutes a day just doing meditation and starting there, it's going to have a huge impact on your life. And then cultivate it from there and expand that. And that being present, be present with your pets if you only have pets, be present with your family if you have family, you know, with your children especially. There's no greater gift you can give to your child than your loving presence, you know, and really with your lover or whoever else. And as that becomes your state of being more and more, your life is going to change around you. It really is. And then that can spread. Your example can be like a candle that lights these other candles. And then that spreads. And that's what's going to happen. I will tell you that is what's going to happen, viewers, but we have to do it.
Love one another.
Yes.
Simple. Love one another. If we love one another, there could be no war in Ukraine.
Yes.
The soldiers love the people. Whatever Putin said, did, or whatever other agenda's running is gone. It's just a whinge in some room somewhere. But it's not here now. We love one another. That solves the problem. It's too simple.
And it really does, you know, like I will say that my own experience during this interview, I've done a lot of spiritual work myself over the years. I've done a lot of meditation. I've sat with some great teachers. I'm actually going to try and get a man named David Waldman, David G, on here so he can talk about some of this non-dual mysticism that Paul is talking about here. That said, I've been in a very agitated place, especially I had a period of time where I kind of went into a spiritual coma almost from 2012 or 2013 to 2016 and got really from the politics. And it took a while for that to settle back down. And then when the pandemic broke, that would cause all this stuff. But what it caused me to do is to work on my shadow. And my experience of sitting here with Paul, especially when Paul was directing my attention to a certain place, was that I felt that peace inside. And that's how it spreads. And I hope that you felt that too when Paul directed you to just shh and just be here and that stillness. And truly, once you start having and cultivating that, as Paul's been cultivating this for a long time, and I've cultivated a fair amount of time, you can start to inspire others and they start to change. And then, like Paul said with the 100th monkey, like eventually it won't matter. It's going to move through the human unconscious. It's interesting, but they did a test with the 100th monkey. They would have they had a crossword puzzle and they would see how long it took people to solve it. And then they released a crossword puzzle in Australia. This was back in like the 60s or 70s, pre-internet. And then they released that same crossword puzzle in the UK the next day. And they found that basically the rate of time it took the people in the UK to solve the puzzle was half the time. And they did it the other way too. They did it in the UK and then Australia and saw, and what they discovered is that if it was new, it took people a while to break it down and figure it out. But if it had already been done across the planet, people were able to do it faster over here. And it's because of that collective unconscious. I mean, this has literally been proven scientifically. They don't have any explanation that they like because they always want to move you towards materialism and away from the spiritual in our current scientific paradigm, which is not required. We can have mystical science and we will someday. But the current paradigm is to move towards the material. So they hemmed and hawed about why it is that that happens, but it's indisputable that that happens. And so by that same token, as we do this development within ourselves, it can't help but start to spread in the world. And the more that you encourage others to do it, the more it spreads. And soon it would reach a point to where these kind of things just can't happen anymore. The vibration of the collective unconscious would be too high. And this is what's going to defeat the nasties, as Paul put it in part one, these people who are using occulted power to dominate things. Their time is very nearly up. The Kali Yuga is ending in 2025. And there's many, many signs pointing towards that their time is up. Now, it looks like, if you just look at the surface, it looks like, oh, how can anything stop these monsters? But below that, if you feel into it, there's a nervousness on the part of these people who are running things because they're starting to lose control. And it's because people are waking up. Some of them are on the political stage, but more and more people are moving from the political to the spiritual. And when they move there, it's game over.
Think about the 100 monkey. Why 100? From the collective unconscious, there could have been 25 monkeys, but 100. That's the number chosen. That's the letter Quoth, the moon card. The 100 succussions, that's the alchemic Mercury. The alchemic Mercury, the symbol of Mercury is Venus with a cup. A circle, a cross that is aligned to the elements, it's harmonious. A circle is a space that receives in the cup. Mercury is the light of the moonlight reflecting upon the waters of mind. And there the symbols tell us exactly what's happening. Quoth is transcendent of life and death. It's not limited to one individual, it's transcendent. That dynamic that's within the 100 monkeys, whether it's 100 or not, that's what our language tells us. The archetype's telling us this, if we understand how the language, the Qabbalah works, it's saying this is the moon. The moon's occult. And the whole process is there. How brilliant is that? We say this shit all the time and we don't know what we're saying. Maybe we should listen to ourselves. Hey. Now, these are dark times. This is the time they call judgment in Christianity. Judgment is when the fire, the spiritual energy is active, and it's active. And we're suffering so much. But look there, there's the angel blowing the trumpet. Shh. And they're awakening on the waters of mind. We're awakening on the waters of mind. It's the triplicity, the triangle, the eye and the triangle. We can see spiritually. That, these people are materialistic. It's an ego. The cult of the ego is mortal. That's why they're scared. They're shitless now. They're scared shitless. They're afraid. So the more they're afraid, the more they control. The only thing that controls is the ego. The soul just surrenders to the Tao and everything happens without effort. The ego does all the rest. Well, a lot of egos running shit right now. We don't need to run it. We just need to be in the Tao. And the times will change it. The tide's changing. It can't but not change. This can't go on. Love one another. That'll solve the problem.
And I think I feel that this is probably a great place to stop because it really, I think, encapsulates the message I think that you've been that you want to get across to the world about to understand the material world, yes, it's the thing, but that moving into this spiritual paradigm that you're discussing is where real change is going to happen. It's the real solution. People are looking for solutions. This is a solution, truly. It doesn't seem like it, because it's a better way of putting it is, it's like Paul's pointing towards a door that says solutions are beyond here. And that doorway is getting into that still present moment. And on the other side, the solutions are going to come into you. Everyone's like, well, but what about energy, or what about the environment, or what about this, or what about that? Well, whatever you're meant to do, that solution is going to come to you. And it's going to come to you from finding the state that Paul is talking about. And speaking of which, Paul has an excellent website. What's your website again, Paul? And I'll have this all linked below.
Spirituallife.com.au.
There you go, spirituallife.com.au. And this will be scrolling across the bottom anyway, but I just wanted to say that Paul is Paul's an amazing teacher. His intuitive understanding of all this is great. And you do coursework and so forth through that?
We're organizing stuff to do on the website. Like I'm old, I've got to get to actually do something. So yeah, we're organizing. My wife is working diligently, and I've been writing profusely to get as much down as possible. And we have been doing stuff on Facebook, but I want to get out of Facebook because there's too much funny business to put out serious stuff and do it on the website while we still have an internet. And blah, blah, blah. It'll be there. If you want it, you'll find it. If not, you won't.
Yeah. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Brother Paul. I so appreciate you giving me this precious time of yours, and to the viewers. And I hope everyone enjoyed it. And we'll be ending here. And thank you all so much. And have a great day.